So welcome to Living Your Best with Advanced Metastatic Chronic and Non-Curable Cancer, supporting the quality of life throughout the cancer journey. Tonight's topic is eating well with Patty Kinch. My name is Nikki, and I'm so pleased you could join us for tonight's speaker session. I do want to start with our land acknowledgement. Our health and well-being are connected to the land and the environment that surrounds us. We acknowledge that the land we share, learn, and live on are the traditional territories in Alberta of Treaty 6, Treaty 7, and Treaty 8. This is also the home of Métis settlements and the Métis Nation within Alberta. Here at Wellspring, we are both settler and Indigenous, and we pay tribute to those whose footsteps have marked the lands for centuries. Wellspring acknowledges the traditional healing pathways and knowledge of our interconnectedness with the land as gifts provided by elders and knowledge keepers. Living Your Best, of which tonight is one of, is a collaboration with Cancer Care Alberta and Wellspring Alberta. And quickly, a little bio for our speaker tonight. We're delighted to have you, Patty. Patty Kinch is the oncology dietitian at the Grand Prairie Cancer Center. She's been a dietitian with HS for over 29 years now. That's huge. In addition to her work with the patients receiving systemic treatment, radiation treatment, and ambulatory care, she is also host of the HS virtual nutrition classes, including Nutrition Myths and Cancer and the Power of Nutrition. Patty is also the Alberta rep for the Dietitians of Canada Oncology Network. And with that, Patty, thank you for joining us, and I will pass it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks so much for inviting me to talk tonight. I was actually really looking forward to this. I wish I had come up with maybe a fancier, trendier title besides eating well, but hopefully the presentation is a little more exciting than that. So I am going to just try and share my screen here. And if all looks good, I will carry on. So unless I'm hearing otherwise, I'm going to assume it's all looking good there. Perfect. Okay. So thank you, Nikki. I was going to do a land acknowledgement as well. So I just want to also acknowledge, just as Nikki was saying as well. So for the outline for tonight, I have 5 topics and I am really going to try hard to keep it to an hour. So I apologize if I do talk a little bit quickly, but what I wanted to discuss was some common nutrition goals with advanced cancer, tips to help manage some symptoms, general tips for caregivers and support people. And then finally, I wanted to address some of the more common nutrition questions, as well as a few common myths around nutrition and cancer that dietitians get once in a while or quite often. So let's start off with nutrition goals. Cancer is associated with a high risk for poor nutrition because of both the cancer itself and the treatment. So ensuring adequate nutrition is important at any stage, which I'm sure you all are well aware of. Your eating goals can vary and change depending on your changing needs. So at any given time, you may be trying to maintain your weight, preventing loss of muscle mass, and malnutrition, which involves varying degrees of changes in body composition and a change in your functional ability, can occur at any size, regardless of whether you're underweight or carrying extra weight. Sometimes I hear people say, oh, I lost 20 pounds. I actually am glad I lost that. And so I remind people that, during the cancer journey, it is important to try and maintain weight and not have big fluctuations in weight. So I just wanted to point that out because malnutrition can occur at any size. You may also be trying to reduce symptoms from the cancer, the treatment, maybe some lingering treatment side effects, or you just may simply be trying to enjoy food and meals. We do know that eating well with advanced cancer can improve your quality of life by giving you more energy, boosting mood, keeping your muscles strong, and helping to maintain that weight. It can also help your body cope with side effects of treatment and can improve generally how well the treatment works. Eating well helps to heal wounds, rebuild damaged tissues after surgery, radiation therapy, chemo, and other treatments. And if needing hospitalization, eating well can help reduce the length of hospital stays and speed up recovery. There's actually a lot of research studies that have proven that. And finally, it can also improve your immune system and your ability to fight infection. So let's start by reviewing how you can eat to maintain your weight if you're having any difficulty with this. Sometimes it can be easier to eat small, frequent meals by eating every 2 to 3 hours for 5 or 6 small meals per day instead of 3 large meals. Eating by the clock instead of waiting until you're hungry can be helpful, especially if you never ever have that feeling of hunger. And that is something that I hear from a lot of people. I often suggest considering or treating food much like a medication. So think about it that way if you are struggling and you just don't have that hunger, that if you think of it like a medication, it's something that you just need to do every day, even if it's in small increments. Eat when your appetite is better. For some, this is earlier in the day when symptoms are at their lowest and energy is at the highest, or vice versa. You may also want to liberalize or relax any diet restrictions that you might be following, such as a heart healthy diet, for example. It is okay to prioritize eating calories to maintain weight. And eat a high calorie, high protein diet. More calories and protein are needed to stay strong during cancer and any treatments. I'm going to talk about some specific high protein, high calorie ideas in a few slides. And I'm also going to provide some links later on to some nutrition resources and recipes that can help with this. So preventing muscle loss. Due to the cancer itself, as well as any treatment, you may have lost some muscle mass or be at risk for loss of muscle. Protein needs with cancer are higher than under normal circumstances. One of the primary nutrition goals your dietitian will often speak about is eating adequate protein to prevent this muscle loss. Protein is especially important for building and repairing cells, maintaining muscle. It helps to heal tissue and it helps to keep your immune system strong. Maintaining muscle can also help to reduce the side effects of any cancer treatment you may be receiving. This is why through the cancer center or through your cancer journey, you've probably heard lots about protein, protein, protein. Meat, fish, poultry, eggs, and dairy are really good sources of protein, along with the plant sources that sometimes we don't always think about. Things like nuts and seeds, nut butters, and legumes, which includes things like dried peas, beans, and lentils. And we can't forget about tofu. Using nutrition drinks and protein powders can also come in handy, especially if you are struggling to get enough protein during the day. Trying to include a food with protein every time you eat is a really good, effective way of ensuring that your body gets the extra protein that it needs. Your total calorie needs may not be higher, but you do need to eat adequate calories so that the protein actually can do its job properly. So this is why if you've spoken with a dietitian before, we often will provide education on both getting adequate calories and protein. So along with the link to the handouts that I'm going to provide at the end of the session, there are a number of handouts, and one specifically called adding protein to your diet is quite good. So there are numerous cookbooks out there available that do incorporate protein into every recipe. This is actually a picture of one that was recently developed at the U of A. It's excellent. You may have actually received a copy of it through your cancer center, but you can also download it for free of charge at the link that I've listed at the very top there. The only other way to get it now is you can order a hard copy from Amazon. And the last time I looked, they were $14.95 per hard copy. But certainly you can download it for free, and it is an excellent cookbook just for the sake that it really was designed for maintaining that muscle mass. And it does take into account some of the more common side effects. And so the recipes really cater to that. So if you are struggling to maintain your weight, you likely need, like I said, both high protein and high calories. A few suggestions to do this can include choosing higher calorie liquids. So liquids such as drinking higher fat milk instead of water or juice. High fat milk is considered no less than 2% milk fat. So something like the 3.25% or the homogenized milk fat is an excellent option. Flavored milks too, there's a lot on the market now, and they are also an option because of the extra calories they offer. You may also hear about things like muscle milk, which is higher in protein. Also newer in the last few years to the grocery stores are the ultra filtered milks. And these milks are simply cow's milk that's been filtered in a way to preserve more protein and less of the milk sugar. The nice thing about these, outside of the fact that they are double the protein, is you can buy them in the 1%, 2% homogenized chocolate and lactose-free versions, and they are found readily in the grocery store. They're always right where you would buy your regular milks. Just a note, though, that the ultra filtered is different than micro filtered, which you may also see on a milk. Micro filtered means that it basically extends the shelf life of the product. So a lot of these are both ultra and micro filtered, but what you're looking for primarily is the word ultra filtered. They're really easy to pick out because they clearly advertise the fact that they're high protein. Just a note on plant-based beverages, things like the soy milks or the almond beverages, they don't provide fat, and they aren't as high in protein as cow's milk offers. So I do like to remind people of that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with using them, but just kind of keeping in mind that they are very low calorie, very low protein. And the thing you want to do is just make sure that they are fortified with calcium and vitamin D so that you do get that as part of that beverage. Some other ideas include adding high-fat milks, creams, or even using the nutrition supplement drinks to foods such as hot cereals. You could also consider adding these to soups, homemade smoothies, using recipes whenever possible. Adding some higher fat, higher protein things like cheese to pastas, veggies, and soups anytime you can. So, for example, grate cheese into a bowl of soup or add cheese to sauce. To create a cheese sauce for vegetables. Add extra butters or oils whenever you can while cooking at the table. So for example, you could add extra butter on spinach or put coconut oil in your rice, things like that. Anytime you can add extra dips and sauces and gravies, every little calorie counts. And use more nut butters. Nowadays, there's far more than just peanut butter on the market. Cashew butters, almond butters, they're all really great, and they're all kind of fun to try and cook with, especially if you are having some taste changes. And maybe you've always liked peanut butter, but the taste doesn't do anything for you anymore. I always suggest switch it up. Maybe try an almond butter. You may actually find that something different is definitely doable. And there's always protein powders. So adding protein powders to any soft, moist food or liquid, and generally any food really, I suggest with protein powders. You can find them both flavored and unflavored versions, as well as whey-based or vegan versions. And I always just suggest talk with your dietitian if you are looking at trying a different protein powder, because there are so many on the market. Some of them do have other additives to them. So it is good to talk with your dietitian in your cancer center about them. And of course, you can always try a liquid meal replacement. There's tons on the market now. Some are both high protein, high calorie, while other options I'm seeing pop up a lot more now are more of the higher protein, but lower in calories. So In order to lower the calories, they've added a sugar substitute to reduce the sugar content, but added more protein. And so there's many out there on the market. And again, something you can talk with your dietitian about if, you're needing both protein and calories or one or the other. And along with that, AHS does have a handout called Adding Calories and Protein to Your Diet that you will find in the links that I'm going to chat about. So now I just want to address some common symptoms associated with cancer and or the treatment. Eating enough to maintain weight and muscle mass can sometimes be far easier said than done. I fully realize that, especially if you're experiencing any symptom that's affecting your intake. So I'm just going to talk specifically about nutrition strategies for the low appetite, taste changes, dry mouth, nausea, and constipation. There certainly are others, which many of you are probably well aware of, but these are just some of the more typical nutrition-related symptoms that dietitians are asked about in the clinic. So starting with low appetite, causes of low appetite can be the tumor itself, it can be the treatment, it can be medications, and it can even be psychological factors. Similar to what I mentioned as a strategy for maintaining weight, eating small, frequent meals can be really helpful when you don't have much of an appetite. You can also make yourself a goal, something as simple as every time you get up to go to the bathroom or every time you walk through the kitchen, you just set yourself a goal of just taking a small bite of food. Again, every little bit counts. Keeping foods more visible and in reach can also be helpful, such as keeping a cooler or a tray of snacks by the couch, something that's maybe non-perishable, or something on your bedside table. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and you maybe feel a little bit of hunger. The other thing I always suggest is really try to limit any low calorie foods and fluids, such as black coffee, broth, or any diet foods. Try high calorie and high protein foods, such as custards, cheese, nuts, things like that. Again, every mouthful counts. And by doing that, you can maximize the amount of calories that you're getting per bite. You can also drink liquid meals, such as those commercial nutrition supplement drinks or homemade shakes. Liquids sometimes can be a lot less overwhelming than sitting down to a full plate of food. Liquid calories are definitely a good option if you don't desire eating routine meals. And I always suggest that if you're finding that you're not able to eat bare minimum 50% up to 65% of what you would typically eat at a meal, then it's a really good time to consider either a commercial nutrition drink or a homemade shake just to make up for the calories that you aren't getting. The other idea is trying to drink fluids between meals rather than with meals if you find that the liquids fill you up faster. And then going on short walks or doing any kind of light activity, something that you have found in the past can help stimulate your appetite. And then the other thing I always mention is that as much as we know high fiber foods are super beneficial, if you're finding that your appetite's already down and high fiber foods make you feel really full, it is absolutely okay to reduce the fiber in your diet if that allows you to eat more. You may also notice that you eat better in the company of others or outside of the home, or you may eat more if you're not the one preparing the meals. So basically, I tell people, do what we tell our kids not to do. So distracted, mindless eating, it can be super helpful. And so keeping those snacks on hand when you're watching TV or maybe you're playing a game or something like that, that mindless eating can really help. Taste changes, those are definitely not uncommon. You may find foods taste unpleasant, bland, and or maybe they're really strong tasting particular foods, or maybe they have zero taste, no taste at all. So if you have any taste changes, just a few suggestions here. You could consider trying a mouth rinse. So club soda works good. It doesn't have to be carbonated. You can let it go flat if you find that the carbonation bothers you. or adding a quarter to a half a teaspoon of baking soda into 1 cup of water, and then rinse your mouth with that to cleanse your palate before, during, and after meals. This can really help clean bad tastes out of your mouth. Sometimes people have to do this a few times through a meal, but it can really be helpful. You can also try sugar-free gum or mint, which can remove or mask a bad taste in your mouth. I do suggest the sugar-free gum or mint versus the regular gum and candies, just because sugar itself can dry out the mouth. So the sugar-free gum can be a little bit better. Just watch how much of the sugar-free gum and mints you're using, just because of some of the ingredients. Sometimes they can cause a lot of gas and stomach upset. And trying tart foods before a meal can sometimes just improve the flavors overall. So something as simple as a few teaspoons of sherbet or lemon and soda can help. If a food tastes too sweet, you can actually sprinkle just a little dab of salt on there. Or if you're having something that you could add vinegar or lemon juice, that sometimes will pull that sweetness out. So for example, I'm thinking of like a salad. If you're having a salad with nuts and some fruit in that, and if you just find that the fruit itself is just way, way too sweet, but you want to have it, using a vinaigrette or something can be quite helpful for that. If a food tastes too salty, it's kind of the opposite. Try adding sugar, honey, jams, sweet spreads, or fruit to it. And then if foods or fluids have that metallic taste, which we hear about quite a bit, you can try eating with plastic or the bamboo utensils, and just try and cook in glassware versus any metal cookware. Avoid any food from a can, or try not to cook on any metal sheet pans. And sometimes that alone can really make a difference. Use extra herbs, spices, sauces, anything that you can taste to encourage eating. Eating foods cold or at room temperature can also help as well by cutting the odor, which sometimes will affect our desire to eat. And lastly, it sounds a little funny, but try foods that you don't normally eat. We typically have an expectation of what a food should taste like. And when it just tastes awful or different, it can be super discouraging. So this is where I usually suggest, you know what, maybe it's time to try something that you haven't tried in a while, or something you've never tried. And so this is when I throw in the idea of tofu. Or even things like jicama or avocados, things like that, where maybe maybe you just don't eat a lot of those. Dry mouth. The reason why I wanted to talk about this is this often can contribute to poor taste as well. So if you find your mouth is really dry, first of all, you want to make sure you're drinking enough through the day. And most people need bare minimum 8 cups. So 8 to 12 cups of fluid per day, I would suggest, be a goal. And just keep in mind, and this can come from fluids that you drink or any liquid foods such as soup. You can also count coffee, tea, that kind of thing. The only thing is if you do drink more than 3 cups of coffee, then I'd probably stop counting at 3 cups and then try and get the rest of your fluid elsewhere. Try and keep your foods moist, so gravy, sauces, creams, things like that that can melt in your mouth. The idea as well of putting a humidifier in your room. So if you're a mouth breather, it's nice to have a humidifier in the bedroom, or if you spend a lot of time, say, in the living room, have a humidifier there. And avoid any alcohol-based mouthwashes because they can make the mouth even drier. And then lastly, there's products on the market that can help with a dry mouth. And so what they contain is a ingredient called xylitol. So you may have seen these products on the market, things like Biotine or Xylee Melts. Those are just to name a few. There's also some other products that I've seen starting to pop up, things like pure gum, pure mints. They're xylitol based as well. And so they can help to stimulate your salivation, and that can really help prevent dry mouth. So that's what I wanted to mention on dry mouth. But again, there is another Alberta Health Services Eating Well with Taste and Smell Changes handout that you can access as well through us. And nausea. The number one strategy for managing nausea is really to take the anti-nausea medications as prescribed. Some can be taken 30 minutes before meals, especially if you notice that eating brings on the nausea. I always suggest that if it's not working, it's really important to go back to your healthcare team to have your nausea plan reevaluated, because the primary strategy, especially if you're going through treatment, the primary strategy for chemo-related nausea is the anti-nausea medication. Other nutrition suggestions along with the anti-nausea medication are things like ginger ale, ginger tea, and the old standby eating starchy or salty foods to settle the stomach, such as crackers, toast, breadsticks, those kind of things. A big one I always remind people is avoid having an empty stomach. Don't go too long between meals. So I know that's tough if your appetite's not there, but it is quite interesting how going, 5, 6+ hours between meals then can potentially bring on nausea, and then it can be kind of a vicious cycle. So just kind of keeping that in mind. It doesn't have to be much that you're having, but just try to avoid having that empty stomach. And then if smells bother you, really try and keep food preparation in well-ventilated areas. It's summertime, so that's great. Open those windows, eat room temperature foods more often. Sometimes a cold plate, such as, fruit, cheese, cold sandwiches, things like that can be really refreshing and different. And then, of course, if smells bother you, really rely on your support people to maybe do some meal prep for you, so you're not having to be in the kitchen and having to smell the food cooking. The last side effect I just wanted to mention was constipation. Obviously, it can be a result of medications that you might be on, can be a result of the cancer itself, the treatment, any change in your eating pattern or food choices, fluid, if you're not drinking enough, as well as any change in your activity level can really play a role in developing constipation. You may have been advised to consider a laxative, especially if taking pain meds. Some people do worry that the bowels can become dependent on laxatives, and there are products that you can discuss with your healthcare team that don't create this dependency. So there are definitely ones out there that you don't have to worry about that. Try natural laxatives as well, such as prunes, prune juice, or homemade fruit lax spread. If we do have, through Alberta Health Services, we do have a recipe that we often give out on a homemade fruit lax spread. It's quite delicious, actually. It's very much like a jam. But if you're not a fan of any of these options, I know it probably sounds a little bit weird, but you can do prune juice smoothies. And the interesting thing with those is most people I know who've tried them say that they don't notice the prune taste in there because there's so many other ingredients. And then, of course, the 8 to 12 cups of fluid per day. And then just keeping in mind, we're heading into summer, hot days. You definitely need more fluid, and especially if you're being more active on those days. And then gradually adding more fiber. So, obviously you want to add that fiber in your diet if you find that your diet's quite low in fiber. Just keep in mind that you do need to kind of start slow and then make sure you're getting enough fluid, because if you start to really amp up the fiber in your diet and you aren't getting enough fluid, it can actually worsen constipation. So, good examples obviously are fruits, ground flax, hemp seed hearts added to oatmeal, things like that. Add veggies to homemade shakes, whole grain breads, crackers, all of those kind of things. And then again, try and keep as active as you can. It doesn't mean you have to be out there walking 10 miles, but even for 15 minutes, it could be something as sweeping the floor, just going for a small walk. Then there are the fiber supplements. So for example, psyllium fiber. These can also be used, but I do caution that if you are taking narcotics for pain, so something like codeine, It's best to avoid a fiber supplement just because the narcotic for pain can make the bowel quite sluggish and it can actually worsen the constipation. So you're better off looking at more of the food sources, the natural laxatives, and talking to your healthcare team about a laxative in that case. So having said all that, I've got 2 slides here on tips for caregivers because this is something that does come up quite a bit as well. And if you are a caregiver, providing foods and nourishment can be something that you feel you are able to offer. It can sometimes be very frustrating to not be able to help when someone isn't feeling up to eating or is experiencing side effects that are contributing to their poor intake. So I just remind people to, try and be understanding if only a small portion of the food that you offer is eaten. Offer favorite foods, comfort foods, focus on those foods that are a comfort to our person and a choice from our person. And it's okay to encourage food, but try not to force accepting and respecting a person's decision on what, when, and how to eat. Be patient. Meals can often take longer than usual. A usual 15-minute meal might turn into 45 minutes, and that's okay. Be flexible. So for example, I always think of this one. Sometimes breakfast foods all day is far more comforting, for example, to somebody, or maybe your person, they just want to drink fluids for that day. And so nutrition drinks might be more comforting than full meals for that person. And so much of our lives are based around food. We often associate food with love, entertainment, and it's usually the focal point of every get together or special occasion. To many of us, food is love. It's symbolic, nurturing, it's compassion. So when a loved one loses their appetite, it's definitely difficult for sure. It can feel as though our loved one is giving up, and despite our good intentions, making someone feel forced to eat isn't always helpful. If your loved one is close to the end of life, it's important for you to know that they aren't suffering because they're eating less. Pressing a patient or a person to eat will not reverse weight loss towards the end of life, and it may put added stress on your person and yourself. So I just want to make a comment that sometimes we're asked why we may not suggest or use artificial means of nutrition, such as IV nutrition, or you may hear it called parenteral nutrition. Or tube feeding is another artificial means of nutrition. So there's some situations where we just don't suggest either or. Towards the end of life, it has been shown that artificial nutrition does not improve survival. And in fact, it can decrease survival if there's any complications. So for example, an infection. And at this stage, it will not reverse weight loss or cause weight gain because the immune response at this point with the cancer actually makes the protein and nutrients unusable to the body. So I know that this in itself is a bigger discussion for another talk, not for this talk today, but it is something that I just wanted to bring up in case you do have questions on this. Reach out to your cancer team and, get as much information as you can. Okay, so I said I've got 20 minutes, so I'm going to jump into the common nutrition questions and myths. And so these are just some that I've listed that as dietitians, we receive many of these questions. And there are certainly an ever-growing number of myths, controversies, trends when it comes to nutrition and cancer. And unfortunately, most of them aren't backed by solid evidence. So the big question, why is this such a concern to us? And really, it's because the myths may cause food restriction and stress around eating. Any unnecessary food restriction, it really offers no benefit, and it further increases the risk for malnutrition. And basically, it pulls the joy out of eating, and we want to still enjoy eating. So I have a long list of questions and myths on this slide. I'm going to try and cover them all, like I mentioned, in the time that we have left. But I did want to bring up that through Alberta Health Services, we do offer two Zoom classes. One is called The Power of Nutrition, and the other one is called Nutrition Myths and Cancer. And again, I'm going to provide the links for all of these at the end of the class if you're ever interested in attending. So I'm going to start off with the one that we probably hear about the most often, and that is the question about, does sugar feed cancer, the myth, the concern that sugar feeds cancer. So the best way I can kind of go about this is just to explain that all food is made up of protein, fat, or carbohydrate, or a combination of any of these three. So these are the components of food that contribute calories. So for example, I'm going to use milk as an example. In milk, there's whey and casein. That is the protein of the milk. Then, of course, there's the milk fat. And then we have the sugar in milk, which is lactose, and that is the carbohydrate. So basically, sugar is simply a form of carbohydrate. So as another example, we could look at a piece of fruit. A fruit contains primarily just fruit sugar. So again, it is sugar and it's simply a form of carbohydrate. So in addition to the sugars added to food for sweetness, in things obviously like soft drinks, desserts, sugar is found naturally in foods, including fruit, veggies, it's in grains, it's in milk, and it's in honey. You may have heard the term glucose, and glucose is what all carbohydrate is broken down to for the body to use, regardless of the food source. So it's kind of the end result of digestion. All our cells in our body prefer to use glucose for energy. So this includes both cancer cells and healthy cells. You cannot pick and choose which cells will get the glucose and which don't. And if you don't have enough carbohydrate, thus this glucose in your diet, the body is miraculous. It actually has an innate way to make sugar from muscle and fat stores in order to feed all the cells in the body. So basically, we can't try to starve our cancer cells without impacting our healthy cells. Avoiding sugar completely will not help treatment and actually could leave your healthy cells low on energy. Cancer cells are much more tenacious than the healthy ones, and they will persist at the expense of the rest of the body. And as I mentioned earlier, in order to minimize muscle loss, we need to consistently have enough calories, which includes sources of carbohydrate or these glucose-containing foods, along with our protein foods. It really comes down to choosing healthier forms of carbohydrates in order to get better nutrition from the food we eat. So if you do find that you are eating a lot of sweets, it can displace the healthier, more nutritious foods, which in turn can then deprive your body of important nutrients, such as the fiber, the vitamins and minerals that all the healthy cells need. So I just remind people, if you're eating a lot of refined grains, so things like white flour, white pasta, those kind of things, it is better to switch to more whole grain and try and avoid too much with a lot of added sugar. Now this is, obviously if your appetite is good and you're not just focusing on getting the calories in. So under normal circumstances, if you're eating well, you're maintaining your weight, it is good to try and reduce the amount of added sweets plus anything that's isn't whole grain. So the bottom line is that removing all sugar or all carbohydrate containing foods from the diet does not prevent or slow the growth of cancer. It is okay to go ahead and enjoy some birthday cake or dessert at a family function, but maybe consider a glass of milk over a glass of pop with it. So that is just a little blurb on sugar. What about superfoods? They're interesting. There really is no definition or such thing as a superfood. It's a marketing term. There is no one single food that has the superpower to protect against cancer, slow cancer growth, or kill cancer. So, you may hear things like drinking celery juice or eating lots of asparagus. There's, many, many more out there that we hear about. Certainly, if you enjoy eating some of these foods marketed as having superior power, you can certainly incorporate them. Nothing wrong with that, putting them into your diet, but it's important to know that they won't cure your cancer. And in fact, some of these foods don't have as much nutrition as people are led to believe. So just a few examples that I hear about, quite a bit through the clinic. Wheatgrass. Wheatgrass is green leaves of a young wheat plant. And despite the hype and claim on wheatgrass, it doesn't really have any unique list of nutrients. And in fact, it's nutritionally comparable to broccoli. The acai berry, this is another one that's, sort of been out and about for probably 5+ years. We hear a lot about it. It's found on the acai palm tree in South America. It has very limited research, but it has a long list of claims. In contrast, red kidney beans have one of the highest antioxidant contents, but kidney beans, they're not as trendy or exotic sounding, but they probably are food we really should focus on more and give far more credit to. Goji berries, mangosteen berries, noni juice fruit. These all have a long list of marketing claims that aren't backed with science. In comparison, a red apple has at least as much antioxidant content and quite a bit cheaper too. So again, these things are totally fine to have. It's just sort of be aware that, especially with today's prices with groceries, you certainly can get enough nourishment from things that are on the shelves. Green powder is another one. It is made from a blend of various veggies, fruits, probiotics, and other plant-based ingredients that are dehydrated. Green powder is really just not the same as eating fresh fruit and veggies. You miss out on the nutritional benefits of the whole food, including the fiber that's not there. And interestingly, most of the claims on the different products are based on the actual whole food itself and not the dehydrated version. And because we don't typically know how much of each ingredient is in the actual supplement, it really is impossible to know if there is enough in there to even matter. So again, totally fine to have, but it may just not have the superior power that it's marketed as. And then the last one I'm just going to mention is turmeric. The active ingredient is the curcumin and has both antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. We definitely know that. Adding it to food is completely fine as far as taste and that, but supplementing does carry some risk. Kidney stones is one, and we definitely know that it can interact with some cancer therapies. So if you are getting treatment and you're considering a supplement such as turmeric, just let your team know, and then they can do an interaction checker just to make sure that there isn't going to be an issue with that. Hormones in food, they do occur naturally in plants and animals. So as such, there's no hormone-free meat and dairy product. The government does approve growth promoting hormones, and they are allowed in beef cattle, so cows for beef production. And the purpose is to produce leaner meat, more muscle, less fat. Health Canada does confirm that the use of hormones in beef cattle is safe and without any impact to human health. And in Canada, it is good to know that it is illegal to give hormones to dairy cows, veal cattle, pigs, chickens, and turkeys for the purpose of milk production or growth promotion. In other countries, though, hormones may be allowed. So this is really important to know, as you might be reading articles or hearing about hormones or foods pertaining to another country and its food supply, and not necessarily what pertains to Canada. And I do see that quite a bit, especially if you're, on the internet. A lot of the information doesn't necessarily pertain to what is and isn't allowed in Canada. The other question is about antibiotics. They are a type of antimicrobial medication that may be used in beef, dairy, cattle, pork, poultry, and fish to fight or prevent bacterial infection. They must be used responsibly to prevent that antimicrobial resistance. And for this reason, farmers need a veterinary prescription for specific categories of antibiotics established by Health Canada. And these categories are actually based on the importance or significance to human medicine. Use of antibiotics for promoting growth is actually banned in Canada. And there is an established standard withdrawal period prior to entering the food chain once treated with antibiotics. So Canadian milk does not contain antibiotics. If a cow is treated with antibiotics, the milk has to be thrown away, and then further milk is tested before it can be put into retail. Red meats and processed meats, they refer to the muscle meat from beef, moose, elk, veal, pork, lamb, horse, and goat. And processed meat refers to meat that is preserved by smoking, curing, fermenting, salting, or addition of chemical preservatives. So example, hot dogs, salami, sausages. The reason why I bring this slide up is there is definitely a strong evidence that eating high amounts of red meat can increase the risk of certain cancers. The Canadian Cancer Society does recommend limiting red meat to 3 servings each week. And a serving would be typical of about 3 ounces, so about the size of a deck of cards. The American Institute of Cancer Research, which is also an institution that we do rely on quite a bit, they also recommend that, as well as avoiding processed meat, which means eating it as little as possible. And that is also supported by Health Canada. I just wanted to mention, you may have heard the term nitrate or nitrites. And these are compounds that occur naturally in soil, water. They're in some foods such as beets, celery, lettuce, radishes, spinach, some dairy products, and meat. And they can also be added to dairy products like cheese, beef, poultry, and they can be added to fish. There's no recommendations or evidence to support avoiding any natural occurring nitrates. Naturally occurring nitrates do not undergo the process of becoming nitrites in our body. Nitrates are used as a food additive to prevent the growth of bacteria and to enhance flavor and color of foods. But in the curing process of meat, such as deli meat, ham, bacon, sausage, and hot dogs, nitrates are actually rubbed on the surface of the meat, or they're soaked in a nitrate solution. And then what happens is the nitrates are slowly converted to nitrites by bacterial action. And this is essentially what cures the meat. So Health Canada, their food and drug regulation limit the amount of nitrite levels that processed meats are allowed to have just to ensure safety. There is a strong link that shows that a diet high in processed meat increases the risk of certain cancers, such as colon cancer. However, researchers aren't 100% certain that this link is solely due to the nitrates alone. There's lots of research still ongoing, but mechanisms and main culprits aside, limiting how much processed meat you eat is a really good idea. And I say this very cautiously because I know that smokers and things like that are really popular nowadays, but I think it's important to just be aware of that. High heat cooking. So certain cooking methods that include high or direct heat, like grilling at a high temp or cooking over an open fire, can produce cancer-causing chemicals. You may have heard the term heterocyclic amines, and these are the chemicals that are produced with the high heat. Some of the chemicals can be deposited onto the meat by the smoke produced by the heat source, such as a flame. And so by partially pre-cooking your meat by baking or roasting in the oven, then finishing cooking on the grill, you will have fewer chemicals that will be deposited or produced. You could also consider things like choosing different types of meat to grill. So try fish or chicken more often than red meat. Another idea is to marinate your meat for at least 30 minutes before cooking it. This has actually been shown to reduce the amount of chemicals of concern that are produced when you do grill. You can use marinades that have lemon juice, vinegar, wine, herbs, and spices, that type of thing. And then you can also cook at a low temp or low flame. Try and just trim all that visible fat or skin off the meat, and that will help to reduce the smoke that's caused by the fat dripping into the flame or the grill. And low heat cooking methods like roasting, baking, poaching, they're always good options that you certainly can try. Do I need to eat organic? So this is a question we get a lot too. Organic foods are produced without human-made or synthetic pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers. They're GMO free, so genetically modified organism free. There's no antibiotics or growth hormones, and there's no irradiation or ionizing radiation, which is a method of preserving foods. Organic foods, they certainly are popular, due to people's concerns, their fears over the pesticide residues, and there is a belief that organic is more nutritious. But bottom line, really, buying organic is a personal choice. It's not a requirement for health. There really is no significant difference between organic and conventional, which is what is most important in terms of health. Really look for freshness of any product you buy. If you're seeing produce that doesn't look good, it's sitting there, it's been sitting for a while, it probably doesn't contain the nutrients that it initially started with, whether it's organic or not. Basically, choose to eat more veggies and fruit and wash your produce well with cold running water, regardless if it's conventionally or organically farmed. And I always just remind people that if you're going to eat something with a peel, after you run it under cold running water, rub it really well and really scrub it with your fingers close to the stem. And just maybe, don't, sometimes people eat, for example, an apple right down to the core. I usually suggest, if you're concerned, avoid eating close to the stem where it's a little bit harder to clean that area. And just remember that, canned, fresh, or frozen are all excellent ways to get good produce. And having said all that, it's gardening season. It can be extremely satisfying to eat foods that you've grown in a garden or purchase at local businesses. So it's just good to know that if produce is grown to its full potential, it contains the nutrients that it should. But you don't, again, organic is a personal choice. Nothing wrong with doing that if that's what you prefer to do, but no health need to do that. Do I need to follow a special cancer diet? So you may have read or heard about special cancer diets, just keto, alkaline, juicing, Gerson, anti-inflammatory diets. I could name, the list is lengthy. Advocates of these special cancer diets market them as a way to improve health, cure cancer, and other diseases. But unfortunately, to date, there's no evidence to support any of the claims. And many of these diets do lack important foods and nutrients. Following unnecessary restrictive diets, it certainly can have nutritional consequences, including depriving those healthy cells of the nutrition that they need to keep strong. So it does remain important to balance your diet, like I said before, with the protein, the carb, and the fat sources daily so that you do get a wide range of nutrition. So really, if you can keep everything in your diet and feel comfortable with that, making sure you do have fruit, veggies, whole grains, and healthy plant-based fats such as olive oils and those protein-rich foods, that's really the best way to go. And I always encourage people, if you do decide, if you come across something that you want to try, as dietitians, we would never shut that down. We just want to work with you. We want to just make sure that whatever you're considering, we can help, and maybe we need to give suggestions on different approaches and ways to just ensure if you are doing something different, that you are getting the vitamins and minerals and so forth and how to get that. So, we are open-minded for sure. If your appetite is good and your weight's stable, your cancer care team will frequently suggest eating using more the Mediterranean style of eating. And I'm going to just put this up here. I wanted to mention though, I'm not going to go through the Mediterranean style of eating in detail, but I wanted to mention phytonutrients or phytochemicals, which is another name for phytonutrients. You may have heard this before. I bring this up with the Mediterranean style of eating because it is rich in phytonutrients. These are compounds that are naturally occurring in plant foods such as fruit, veggies, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. and they can act in a variety of ways to protect health, such as antioxidant properties, which protect cells from damage. So that's one way that they are helpful. There's many, many more. The important take-home message from current research is that we need this wide variety of plant-based foods in our diet to get that full spectrum of phytochemicals in order to protect ourselves. And unfortunately, taking phytochemical or antioxidant supplements just isn't the same, because it is likely that the interaction of these compounds in whole foods is what is responsible for their health benefits. So they kind of all work together like a puzzle. They all need to fit. So this is where the Mediterranean style of eating is a really good plant-based approach to getting these phytonutrients. It's not a diet, and it doesn't exclude meat. So sometimes people are a little concerned about that, but really it comes from countries like Spain, Italy, Greece, Turkey, and it emphasizes more of the plant-based foods. So more of the peas, the beans, the lentils, nuts and seeds, and the healthy plant-based oils like olive oil. It's really rich in fiber, really rich in vitamins, minerals, and these phytonutrients. And the beauty of it is it's naturally low in red and processed meat, refined grains, and sugar. So again, along with the links, there is a handout on the Mediterranean style of eating if you wanted to have a look at it. It's a very nice way. It's actually a way of eating that's been studied with diabetes and heart disease and hypertension and so forth. And they're just finding excellent outcomes with it. So two more I just want to touch on. I hope it's okay. I see it's 8 o'clock, but I just have a few more slides. So Nikki, is everyone okay with that if I just take 5 more minutes?
Absolutely, Patty.
Okay, perfect. So my primary message with this slide, as you see in bright red, bold, is food first. Eating a diet rich in all of these things that I've mentioned, the veggies, the fruit, and so forth, is really what as dietitians we sort of hope happens first. The nutrients that we get from these foods really have that synergistic effect and are more bioavailable to the body when they're taken in a food form, because they're interacting with other foods. A particular supplement, though, like calcium, it might be necessary for those unable to get enough from food to meet their daily needs, but there really is no supplement that can be recommended through cancer care at this point in the research that specifically protects against cancer or slows the growth of cancer. If you're eating good, you're getting a well-balanced diet, extra supplementation is not typically needed. If you are getting cancer treatment, it is totally fine to take a standard 1-a-day multivite. It's just the single entity vitamins and minerals that we caution people against, just because sometimes they can do more harm than good. Sometimes they can interact with treatment. So just a couple of examples here. If you're taking, say, for example, just a vitamin A supplementation tablet and you take it for a long time at a really high level, it can cause some abdominal pain, rash. It can actually increase your what's called intracranial pressure, so the pressure inside your head and skull. It can cause vomiting. So I have seen people that do start taking really high vitamin A doses, and I always just kind of caution them, especially because even if they get things like the abdominal pain and the vomiting, that's an easy fix to stop, right? So if we know that they're taking vitamin A, we can say, it's maybe a good idea to stop taking that, because it actually could be the cause of the vomiting. It may not be the chemo, for example, that's causing that. The other one is the other example I put that I wanted to put out there was mega doses of vitamin C. The upper limit is 2,000 milligrams. Our body only needs about 90 milligrams that we can get from food very easily. And although vitamin C is unlikely to be harmful, it can actually cause diarrhea, nausea, and vomiting. And because it is an antioxidant, it can actually interfere with some cancer treatments because as an antioxidant, the role of antioxidants is to protect cells. So if somebody is taking high doses of something like vitamin C, there is a thought that it actually could be protecting the unhealthy cells, the cancer cells from that treatment. So I just always caution people, again, it's always personal choice, but just kind of be aware that sometimes supplements, even though we think they're innocent, may not actually be innocent. The only one, of course, if you're not eating well, that's a whole different ball game. I always suggest you meet with your dietitian and have your diet assessed, and then kind of go from there, because there might be other things that you actually need. But for everybody, vitamin D, as a supplement is recommended daily. And this is for everybody. This is from birth right through life. Vitamin D is the sunshine vitamin. It's produced in our bodies upon adequate exposure to the sun. So it actually interacts with our skin. And it helps our bodies absorb calcium to keep bones strong. It has other roles too, really important roles, reducing inflammation, immune function, and other roles. And unfortunately, in Canada, we just don't get as much sun as we need to produce enough vitamin D. And even though it is in foods and it can be added to foods, it can be really tricky to get enough. So fatty fish like salmon, there are vitamin D fortified orange juices, it's in dairy products and fortified eggs. But it is hard enough to get enough in Canada. Our body's ability to make vitamin D does go down with age as well. And so Osteoporosis Canada and Health Canada, they do encourage routine vitamin D supplementation all year round. There is an upper limit though for vitamin D. Vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. So long-term chronic high levels of vitamin D through a supplement actually can be a problem. So unless your doctor has prescribed a higher dose of vitamin D for a short period of time due to a lab confirmed low vitamin D store, it really is best to supplement under that 4,000 units a day. And for just to kind of give you an idea, for adults up to 70 years of age, the amount you need is 600 units per day. If you're over 70, it's 800 units per day. And then if you are at risk for osteoporosis, then it is higher. Usually we suggest 2,000 units per day. And then lastly, natural health products. So the following is just a small list of a larger number of products that are often asked about through the clinic. And I thought it'd be worthwhile just to address them as a whole right now, because I could do a whole presentation on many of these. So natural health products are vitamins, minerals, herbs, other supplements that you take on a regular basis as a natural medicine. So that's how we define it. You're using it as a natural medicine. They're sometimes taken in higher amounts that can be attained through the diet. So chemo drugs, radiation, and radiation therapy, they attack the cancer cells in very complex ways. Cancer therapies are developed to maximize the damage to the cancer cell while trying to minimize the damage to the healthy cells. Unfortunately, the natural health products could change this and prevent your treatment from achieving the desired effect. It can increase the side effects of your treatment, or they can interact, like I was mentioning, with your therapy in a way that can't be predicted. So just as a simple example, St. John's wort reduces the amount of chemo drug in the blood by about a half, which means that less cancer cells essentially are being destroyed if you're taking St. John's wort. And the cancer team, through our cancer clinics, we really need that scientific proof to be sure that it's safe to take these products during treatment. And at present, unfortunately, studies are just not available, and the safety or their benefits of taking the natural health products during treatment isn't known. So again, it is one of those things, it's certainly a personal choice. We absolutely respect personal choice. And if you do decide to take these products and you are going through treatment, just, make sure your cancer team knows. And then it's just good so that it can be run through interaction checkers that we have here. So, never feel like you can't be open about any product that you're taking. The more we know, the better we can help. But it is something to kind of keep in mind that sometimes they may actually interfere with that treatment. So just a couple of last things I wanted to mention, just in general about evaluating nutrition information. Stay alert, really read closely. Keep an eye out for some of those red flag words. So if you're reading something and it's really flashy and they talk about breakthroughs, discovery, miracles, it is a red flag. It doesn't necessarily mean the information is wrong, but it's certainly a red flag. Um, those aren't typical terms that are used in healthcare. So again, it doesn't mean the information isn't correct, but it is something to just kind of keep an eye out for. And just make sure you get the whole story. So these short little blips we see on TV, radio, social media, they really can miss important details. Sometimes, they're only talking about one single study. And the example that I often use in some of the other classes that I do is, there's thousands of studies out there on the benefits of fruits and vegetables, or hundreds anyway, of the benefits of fruits and vegetables for many, many things. But if there was ever that one study that came along that showed, oh, maybe they're not, you can probably bet that that would be the only study that would ever hit the news, just because it's flashy and it's out there. And so even as healthcare people, we never rely on a single study. We need multiple studies that are done in a particular way to even go forth and make a recommendation. So yeah, just something again to think about. And then promises, always be skeptical, any quick fix. I always suggest, like, if there is something that we truly know will make a difference, you can bet we're going to be telling people for sure. So it's always good to be a skeptic. I think there's a lot of good information out there, but there's, like I said to begin with, there's a lot of misinformation too. And sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference. And using reputable sources, so using, say, for example, the Canadian Cancer Society information or your local cancer center, kind of start there. And then at least it gives you a place to springboard off of if you're doing a little bit of research on your own. So the very last thing I wanted to show here was just 2 slides on some sites you can look at. And just in terms of dietitians, don't forget about us. That's what we're here for. We're really here to help in any way we can nutritionally. The first bullet there is a link to all the nutrition workshops that are offered through Alberta Health Services, not just the cancer related ones. So you're going to find just a wealth of anything and everything here. It's really a good link. And then you can actually just put in there cancer and it'll pop up the Power of Nutrition and the nutrition myths and cancer information if you're looking for that as well. The ahs.ca/nutrition. This is a really great way to find out about different dietitian services in your area. So we have dietitians spread throughout. So outside of the cancer center, we've got community dietitians, we've got outpatient dietitians. It goes on and on. So this is a really great way to find out close to home who you can access and tap into. And then HealthLink 811, you can speak with a dietitian there, or you can go online and ask questions to a dietitian that way. And then the very last one there, I know it's a long link, but this is actually the link to the Alberta Health Services nutrition handouts that I was mentioning. So anything to do with adding protein, adding calories, taste and smell changes, managing nausea, managing constipation, the list goes on and on and on. And so this is a really good link if you're able to just take a snapshot of that link. I just wanted to mention too, you can always contact your cancer center dietitian for ongoing supports. And so this is going to vary from center to center, but you can always reach out to your cancer center dietitian. We don't need physician referrals. We take calls. We're here to help. What you may find though, is if your need is outside of cancer. So say, for example, you've completed your treatment and you're just really struggling with your diabetes, for example. The dietitian at the cancer center definitely can link you up with for example, the diabetes program or a dietitian who specializes in diabetes. We're all linked within the province under Alberta Health Services. So just keep that in mind. So we're always a great place to start. And a lot of times if we've got the time, I know myself here in Grand Prairie, I just will take any call, and I see people for everything. And where some other centers, they have other routes of dealing with things like hypertension and weight management and so forth. Some recipe sites, these are excellent. So again, if you're able to take a snapshot of this, these are just some really specific cancer-related meal recipe sites. They have great ideas for if you are having any side effects, whether you're going through treatment, done treatment, or so on. They're excellent. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention was Alberta 211. If you're not familiar with this, it's really excellent. It's super helpful. The service helps Albertans find the right resources or services for whatever issue they need, not just nutrition. It's free, it's confidential, it's in 170 languages, and it's got topics such as financial supports, employment, housing, many, many more. On their main page, you will see the food/basic needs tab. And if you click on that, it'll ask you your community, and it has great ideas for food hampers, low-cost meals, school meal programs, household goods. It's just great. And especially at a time now where our grocery prices are so high, eating healthy in general is tough at the best of times. And so when finances are concerned, this is a great resource. And then the last one is the Alberta Healthy Living Program. This is also a great program, and they offer really good workshops on group exercise, health and nutrition education, self-management workshops, chronic pain. Have a look. It's wonderful. There's some really great programs. If any of you have experienced any of these programs, I hope you had some good results from it. So I have gone way over my time, and I so apologize. I figured I was going to do that.
I have a question.
Okay.